Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And it's our literature unit for this edition of the magazine. And it's all about a novel entitled Daddy Longlegs. It's a feminist pioneer novel, or is it an outdated tale? Okay, so when I see a daddy longlegs, of course, I think of a type of spider that's got this really round little body and these really long legs. I think I've seen them here in Taiwan. I think there are hundreds of different species of this particular spider, but I don't think this story is about spiders, is it?
No, it's not. Daddy Longlegs is actually a nickname that a student gives to her benefactor or sponsor. We're going to talk about what that is. But yeah, it's a novel that was written a while ago. Our author was born in the 1800s. So this is an older look, an older take on what life was kind of like back then. It's kind of fun. This is my favorite period of time that she's writing about. So it's kind of fun for me to look at this. I don't know about this novel. I'm going to pick up a copy and read it after we're done. But Daddy Longlegs does not refer to a spider, but is a nickname. We're going to read through day one, guys, and then we'll be back to talk about the plot of this particular novel. Jerusha Abbot, a bright young girl with a talent for writing, is raised in an orphanage. After high school, she continues to work there. One day, Mrs. Lippett, the orphanage director, conveys to her that a trustee is impressed by her potential and wants to sponsor her college education. Jerusha feels delighted and accepts the offer. Her benefactor only has one condition. Jerusha must send him a monthly letter about her college life. She becomes curious about his identity and asks Mrs. Lippett who he is, but she declares that although he has recently visited, he prefers to remain anonymous. Recalling the tall, long-legged shadow she once glimpsed, Jerusha decides to nickname him Daddy Longlegs. That autumn, Jerusha renames herself Judy and begins college at a well-known institution. There, she enjoys new experiences like having her own room, wearing fresh clothes, and attending social gatherings. Although her humble background occasionally makes her feel out of place, Judy's passion for learning remains undiminished. In her letters, she shares insights on topics ranging from literature to politics. As she acquires more knowledge, she becomes increasingly confident and independent, and her gratitude for Daddy Longlegs grows. In her dormitory, Judy befriends Julia Pendleton. When Julia's uncle Jervis, a successful businessman, visits, they spend a memorable afternoon together. Over time, Judy and Jervis develop a close bond. As her college years conclude, Jervis proposes to Judy. Feeling insecure about her background, she hesitates and writes to Daddy Longlegs about her dilemma. Soon after, Daddy Longlegs arranges a meeting and discloses a shocking truth. Jervis is actually her Daddy Longlegs. With her doubts resolved, Judy acknowledges Jervis's profound affection and promises that she will always stay by his side.
Okay, everybody, now that we've listened to today's lesson one time, it's time to talk about the contents of today's lesson. The title is Daddy Longlegs. Is it a feminist pioneer novel or an outdated tale? So, of course, you know feminist is a person who supports women's rights for the betterment of women, and feminism is that particular movement. And, of course, feminism has been around for quite some time, so this novel came out a long time ago. So people look at it as if it were a feminist novel, as a pioneer novel, one of the first works of feminist literature. Is it that, or is it an outdated tale? If something's outdated, it is no longer valid. It has to do with the past. Things have changed. People have moved on. And now people think that is old-fashioned. So that's the question. Is it a feminist novel, or is it just a story that's outdated and old?
Yeah, you could use outdated, or sometimes you'll see out of date. And out of date will have 2 hyphens in it, out, hyphen, of, hyphen, date. It's so old-fashioned, you could say. An old-fashioned story, one that doesn't really apply to us in modern time. But it's always fun to learn from things that were written in the past, I think. So day 1, we're talking about the plot of this particular novel, Daddy Longlegs. We've got our main star here. This is the protagonist of the novel. Her name is Jerusha Abbot. Kind of an unusual name, Jerusha. We're going to find out that she changes her name as she starts to go to university and changes it to Judy. But she's really bright, meaning she's not full of light. It means she's very intelligent. She's quite clever. So she's a bright young girl and has a talent for writing. And here this tells a lot about her background in this next phrase. She's raised in an orphanage. So she's lost her parents somehow. They both are gone. They're dead, probably. And she was raised in an institution that takes in orphans. That's what you call someone whose parents are gone, who takes in orphans and feeds and clothes them and makes sure that they learn things. Usually by the time they're in high school, they then leave the orphanage and start their own lives. But she was raised in an orphanage, and that will be a big part of her background.
Right, so she probably felt at home there. So after high school, she continues to work there. She does not leave the orphanage and does not go work outside of the orphanage. She actually works there. And one day, Mrs. Lippett, the orphanage director, conveys to her that a trustee is impressed by her potential and wants to sponsor her college education. So here we've got the director of the orphanage, Mrs. Lippett, and one day she talks to Jerusha, and she says that, hey, a trustee is really impressed by your potential. She has seen, or this particular trustee has seen your work and knows about you and seems to think that you have some potential. And so this trustee wants to sponsor her college education. In other words, this trustee wants to pay for her college education. That's what a sponsor is, somebody who supports you financially. You can have sponsors for a particular TV show. Today, our sponsor is General Mills or whatever. And in this particular case, the director conveys this message to her, which means she basically transmits, she passes this information from one person to another.
Yeah, sometimes you'll see things that are called conveyor belts. For example, at the airport where our luggage comes in on, that's a conveyor belt. It's a type of transportation that takes something from one place and then moves it or pushes it to someplace else. But we use it to talk about communicating something to someone. Or an expression someone has on their face can convey how they're feeling. So it can let other people understand something. So the orphanage director lets her know that there's a trustee. A trustee is someone who sits on the board of directors of a company or an institution. They have power to make decisions about that particular institution. So this trustee, who obviously has money, is impressed by her potential. And Tom, after I finished reading this, I thought, I think he saw Jerusha and thought, she's pretty. That was my one thought on all of this. Anyway, he is impressed. We don't know if it's a man or a woman right now, but later on we find out it is a man. He's impressed by her potential, feels like she has a lot of talent naturally and wants to help her be successful in the world. And as Tom says, he wants to pay for or sponsor her college education. Jerusha feels delighted. Of course she does. She has no money and has no family. And so this is a chance for her to go to university, which was a huge deal back then. It cost a lot of money.
Right. And of course, if you sponsor somebody and if you give them money, they're probably going to have some condition. Yes, if I give you this, then you have to do this. So that's the condition. The benefactor only has one condition. Jerusha must send him a monthly letter about her college life. So again, this is the benefactor, the person who is helping out somebody else. And yes, indeed, the condition is you need to write me a letter every month and describe your life in college, your life in university. Now she becomes curious about his identity and asks Mrs. Lippett who he is, but she declares that although he has recently visited, he prefers to remain anonymous. So, of course, she's wondering about this person. Yeah, he's sponsoring me. He's giving me money. He's got this condition about writing a letter, but I still want to know more about this person. Yeah, can you tell me more about this person, Mrs. Lippett? Tell me who he is. But Mrs. Lippett says, well, he has recently visited, but he wants to be anonymous, which means without a name, to be unknown.
Right. Very interesting here. I'm not surprised. Some benefactors remain anonymous. When I was going to music school, there was a tenor in my program. He sang tenor, and he had a benefactor who paid for him to pursue his career in opera and was really good to him. And now he's singing professionally at the Met, which is a big deal, the Metropolitan in New York City. So benefactors can be really great, especially if you're in the arts and you don't have a lot of money. It's an expensive thing to pursue if you're in the arts, so it's nice to have a benefactor. But this benefactor doesn't want Jerusha to know who he is or who she is. But she remembers something. She recalls seeing something in her memory. Recall something just means you remember something you saw earlier or you heard earlier, an experience that you went through. She recalls a tall, long-legged shadow. So she didn't really see the person directly. She saw a shadow maybe going down the hallway in the orphanage, and she said she glimpsed that shadow, and she decides to nickname her benefactor Daddy Longlegs because he's a really tall, probably thin fellow. If you glimpse something, you only see it quickly. You don't get a long look. Glimpse can be a verb to she glimpsed, she thought she glimpsed something, or she got a glimpse. It's also used as a noun, and the pronunciation is the same. Guys, before we go on, Tom, why don't we go ahead and take a break? We're going to listen to our Chinese teacher, and then we'll be back.
Hello everyone, 我是派老师。今天讲解的是 Unit 6 Daddy Longlegs Feminist Pioneer Novel or an Outdated Tale。这是第一天的课文内容。这个单元介绍的是20世纪初的一本美国小说，叫做《长腿叔叔》，英文原名是 Daddy Longlegs。这个单元有2天嘛，那第一天的课文内容介绍的是小说的情节概要。故事女主角 Jerusha Abbot 是在孤儿院长大的，在长腿叔叔资助之下完成了大学教育。读大学的时候认识了同学的叔叔 Jervis， 在考虑说要不要接受对方求婚的时候，那我们的女主角她就发现原来这位 Jervis 就是她的资助人长腿叔叔。好，那我们一起来看学习重点，请看到第一段的第一个句子，就点出故事女主角的背景，她的名字 Abbott 之后2个逗点之间是同位语，说明呢女主角是聪明有写作天分的人，在孤儿院长大。再来请同学呢看到第3个句子，第3个句子呢请同学看到句子蛮后面的地方 and wants to sponsor her， 那这是谁想这么做呢？原来是有一位长期资助这个孤儿院的人，他想做一件事情 he wants to sponsor 其实呢就是我们讲资助，那有时候我们会翻成赞助怎么样呢？ Sponsor her college education， 那原来就是这个我们的女主角她要念大学要花很多钱嘛，可是有人愿意去资助。那个 sponsor 后面呢其实也可以直接加要认养的对象，像我们平常说有些人每个月都会固定的捐一些钱给一些慈善机构，比方说这个他可能是协助一些比较中低收入户的儿童他们就学那像这样子的认养其实英文也是 sponsor 的后面是可以直接加认养的对象的。那再来请同学看到第5个句子 her benefactor， 请把这个 benefactor 画起来，就是资助者。那有些时候他其实就是 donor， 就捐助金钱的或者物资的这些人，那就是 benefactor donor 其实在这里呢，所指的是一样的。那请同学要特别注意的是，倒是接受这些资助的人，我们怎么说呢？ Beneficiary， 请同学可以把它记下来。Beneficiary， B-E-N-E-F-I-C-I-A-R-Y。 好，那他的资助人愿意资助我们的女主角去读大学，可是他有个条件 ，one condition 指的就是条件。所以原来啊，这边所讲的这个 offer 是一个 conditional offer， 有条件要资助他。什么样的条件呢？原来就是女主角要常常写信来回报自己在大学学习的状况。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Let's continue with our lesson. We are describing the plot of our featured work of literature for this edition of our magazine. Again, it's entitled Daddy Long Legs, and where we left off, we were talking about Jerusha. She has been sponsored for her college education. She's happy about that, and she's got a benefactor. The benefactor has one condition. I'll sponsor you, but you have to write me a letter every month about your life in college. She wants to know about him, but Mrs. Lippett says no, he wants to be anonymous. And then she thought, I got to think of a nickname for this person. So she remembers catching a glimpse of somebody with a long-legged shadow. Maybe that was the benefactor, so she gave him the nickname Daddy Longlegs. Did you ever have a nickname when you were a kid?
Steph Annie Bucklebum.
Okay, that's something that a lot of our students are going to say right away without any problem.
Not an easy one, no. Did you?
Yeah, but I don't think I can say exactly what it is
dear.
right here.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that some other time. But in any case, that brings us up to date with our lesson for today. Let's see what happens next. So that autumn, that fall, Jerusha renames herself Judy and begins college at a well-known institution. So for some reason, when she goes to university, she thinks that, hey, the name Jerusha might be kind of unpopular. Maybe it's Jewish or something, or maybe it's a name that people don't like. So I think I'm just going to use a more common name, Judy. Okay, this does happen sometimes when, say, people from Taiwan or from Pakistan or whatever go study in the United States and they've got a long name that's difficult to pronounce. Yeah. They just decide to use an English name so it's easier for people to address that person. Like everybody here pretty much has an English name. Most people do. Maybe 75% have an English name. And in this particular case, she chooses the name Judy, and she is going to a well-known institution, maybe Oxford or Cambridge or someplace like that.
Yeah, it's a very nice institution, obviously, from her letters. She learns a lot, and she's hanging out with some very wealthy people. So it's a new experience for her all around. So she enjoys new experiences. She has her own room. In an orphanage, you never have your own room. You're always sharing with multiple kids, not just two of you in a room. You'll be sharing a room with, 5 or 6 or even more. She gets to wear fresh clothes. She's not wearing secondhand clothes or hand-me-down clothes. Hand-me-down clothes means if you're in a family, I'm the oldest sister, I would get the new clothes and then I would hand them down to my other sisters so they would wear my clothes. And, it's not as special. They're not brand new.
I didn't really care. I got hand-me-downs from my brothers. They were older than me, so I would wear their fraternity shirts when they went to university. I didn't mind at all. But in any case here, she no longer has to wear used clothing. She doesn't have to wear rags anymore. She gets some nice clothes because she's got a sponsor, I guess. And she likes having her own room. And, of course, she likes to attend social gathering. A gathering is when people get together for a certain function, usually for a chatting or maybe coffee or maybe some food or something like that. And, of course, the verb there is to gather, which means to bring things together. The people gathered in front of the presidential palace to protest the government policy. And so they're having a social gathering here. She likes going to those. And although her humble background occasionally makes her feel out of place, Judy's passion for learning remains undiminished. Okay, so of course, she has this humble background. It's a nice university, so her classmates are probably all from nice backgrounds, from rich families. Maybe they're royalty or they are aristocracy or something like that. So she feels kind of, I feel I'm kind of out of place here. I'm from an orphanage, I'm kind of a peasant. I'm kind of a farmer or something like that. So, of course, she feels very uneasy about that. That occasionally makes her feel out of place. So it doesn't happen all the time. It just happens sometimes. Occasionally means maybe 20 or 30% of the time.
I wanted to mention sometimes when my family gets together, we call it a family gathering or a family get-together. You can use that too. A get-together would be get-together, a get-together. It's not a family reunion because most of my family sees each other every week. They run into each other, they live nearby. So if it's just a family gathering, you don't have to say it's a reunion. A reunion would be when you're getting together with friends or family members that you haven't seen in a long time. Here it's just a social gathering where, as Tom said, you get together and you just chat, or maybe you have a small meal together, or maybe you're going to have, a dance. Who knows what they're doing? But she feels awkward because most of the people that went to the university in those days were from families that had quite a bit of money. In today's terms, I guess university is still quite expensive, at least in the U.S., but anybody can get in because they would have scholarships. But back then, you literally had to have a benefactor. They didn't have too many scholarships. So you wouldn't see kids that grew up very poor or that were from orphanages attending these very prestigious, very famous universities. So she felt a little awkward from coming from a humble background. She had a passion, though, for learning, and she just learned as much as she could.
Right, so it says, although she feels out of place, sometimes still she has a passion for learning. That's why she's there, so she doesn't let that bother her, the fact that she's from humble origins. And in her letters that she sends to her benefactor, she shares insights on topics ranging from literature to politics. So, of course, she's writing those letters maybe to her benefactor, maybe to some friends at the orphanage. She probably, is a prolific writer. She probably writes a lot. And she shares insights. She has some special information that she wants to share. And, of course, it's a range of topics ranging from literature to politics and probably to arts and science and other things like that. Now, as she acquires more knowledge, as she gets more educated, she becomes increasingly confident and independent, and her gratitude for Daddy Longlegs grows. Okay, so, of course, she's learning more and more, and that gives her lots of confidence. She feels confident because she has confidence, and she feels independent. That means she does not rely on other people. She can take care of herself. So, of course, she's very grateful to Daddy Longlegs. If this person had not been sponsoring her, she'd probably still be back in the orphanage.
She would. She would have just been working at the orphanage, not making very much money, and not having a chance, as we say, to get ahead, to be successful. So in her dormitory, Judy befriends Julia Pendleton. If you befriend somebody, you make friends with them. You become friends. We usually don't say befriend unless we're being kind of formal or we're reading it. It's known more to being used in your writing rather than spoken English. But she befriends Julia Pendleton. Pendleton obviously is a famous name and they have money. So dormitory is where you live. Usually when you first go to school, college, you'll live in a building with a lot of other students. You share a bathroom. You usually go and share a place where you eat together, a cafeteria. I lived in the dorms. We call them the dorms. Do you live in the dorm or dorms? I did my first year and then I moved out. I wanted to cook and not be forced to share a bathroom with, 25 girls. So I moved out after my first year, but that's a popular place, especially when you're first starting to attend university. Now, Julia has an uncle, Jervis, and he's really successful, meaning he's rich, and he visits, and they, meaning Judy and Jervis, they spend a memorable afternoon together.
That sounds nice. And again, this is Julia's uncle, who is Judy's friend here.
Yeah.
Remember, Judy was originally called Jerusha. I'm getting kind of confused here because there's so many J names here. But the uncle is actually Judy's friend's uncle. It's not Judy's uncle. So Julia's uncle is a successful businessman, and his name is Jervis. My goodness, we've got Judy, we've got Julia, and we've got Jervis, and then originally we had Jerusha, so hopefully all of you have kept all that stuff straight. And over time, Judy and Jervis develop a close bond or a close relationship. They can relate to each other. And as her college years conclude, as she gets ready to graduate, Jervis proposes to Judy. Judy, I love you. Will you marry me? I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And feeling insecure about her background, she hesitates and writes to Daddy Longlegs about her dilemma. So she's not quite sure because, well, I'm insecure about the fact that I come from an orphanage and you're a rich, successful businessman. That might not be the best match for us to get together. So she's insecure about that. She's just not sure of herself. So she writes to her benefactor, Daddy Longlegs, and asks about her dilemma. She asks him for some advice.
A dilemma is like a problem that you're currently working with or facing. So soon after, Daddy Longlegs arranges a meeting, and there he discloses a shocking truth. To disclose means you reveal something. You give somebody some new information they didn't have. So he disclosed this shocking truth that Jervis, the guy she's been dating, is actually her Daddy Longlegs.
Ooh.
Her benefactor. So with her doubts resolved, Judy acknowledges Jervis's profound affection. I know you said he loved her, but I get the feeling from this, Tom, that he doesn't say he loves her, and neither does Judy love him. They kind of, respect each other. They have some affection for each other. Whether they're really, madly in love is another question. If you have some profound affection or profound feeling, just means it's very deep, it's intense, it's really strong. So they have affection for each other, and she decides that she's going to go ahead and marry this guy who gave her the opportunity to have a university education, to learn and grow, and potentially be successful.
Indeed. So that brings us to the end of our description of the novel. So you can determine yourself whether it is actually a feminist novel or if it's just an old tale. I would say it's probably not feminist because she still relies on a man to support her.
It was feminist back then for her to be,
I guess so.
Going to school and having some of her opinions. So we'll learn more about that, though, but that's in our next program. Right now, we're out of time. We're going to listen to our Chinese teacher one more time, and then we'll be back to wrap up.
好，再来我们看到第二段，女主角上了大学之后完全不一样了。那怎么样呢？她可以有自己的房间，我们看到第二个句子。那再来，她穿了新衣服，而且后面看到 attending social gatherings。那 gatherings 当然就是我们讲的聚会，一些社交的场合。那她呢，常常也会去参加 attend， 我们用的动词是 attend。那再来第三个句子，我们知道说女主角小时候是在孤儿院长大的，所以这样子的出生背景当然是有一点清寒的背景，我们可以用形容词 humble， although her humble background。那怎么样呢？因为这样子出身比较清寒的背景，女主角有时候在这些社交场合会觉得格格不入。OK， she feels out of place. She feels out of place。指的呢就是在这些社交场合，她觉得无法融入。那可是她在学习的热情是不受影响的哦。Judy's passion for learning remains undiminished。好，那请同学把 passion 跟 undiminished 画起来，词语搭配，就是她对学习的热情丝毫都没有消减 undiminished。那再来，我们看到第四个句子，她常常会给资助人写信嘛。好，那这边在信中她说些什么呢？ She shares insights on topics ranging from literature to politics。 好， insights 就是她个人的看法。那不过呢，我们用到 insight 的时候通常都是比较深入的，所以中文常会说见解，对吧？好，这里请同学画起来。再来呢，第五个句子 是词语搭配，请同学特别注意哦。那当他学到越来越多知识，请同学呢注意，我们中文讲学到很多新知识，那英文呢习惯的词语搭配是 acquires， 而 she acquires more knowledge， 她获得越来越多的知识的时候。再来，我们看到第3段，那我们的 Judy 女主角呢，认识了自己在宿舍朋友的叔叔，也就是我们知道的 Jervis。后来呢，他们产生了情愫。我们看第3个句子 ，a close bond。这个 bond 指的就是情感的连结。那但是感情越来越好，甚至于 Jervis 求婚了，所以我们看到第4个句子 ，Jervis proposes to Judy， 对 Judy 求婚了。那 Judy 却面临了一个进退两难的困境。怎么说呢？我们看到第5个句子最后面这个单字 dilemma。那怎么说呢？因为他觉得很怕说2个人身份这么悬殊，到底适不适合结婚，所以他就写信问他的长腿叔叔。那结果有一个惊人的发现，请看第6个句子，这个长腿叔叔呢揭露了一个秘密 ，He discloses a shocking truth。动词我们用 disclose 就是揭露的意思。最后我们看到最后一个句子 ，With her doubts resolved。请记住，在 with 后面是不可能出现动词原形的。那这里由于是在 doubts 后面，那这个 resolve 跟 doubts 是什么样子的关系呢？我们会说疑虑消除嘛。好，疑虑是被消除，被动的，所以我们用过去分词 resolved。以上就是我们针对第一天课文内容所做的中文讲解，谢谢大家。
That's it, guys. Thanks for joining us.Again, we hope you'll come back for our next program. We're going to talk more about the author and some of the themes of this book. It's very interesting. So for English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom. Goodbye.
Bye.